welcome to another Sunday Taoism lesson with me, Patrick Stewart. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, I am the founder and chief editor of a publication called The Taoist Online. You can find us at thedaoistonline.org. We publish daily articles from hundreds of different writers around the world regarding, of course, Taoism, but also philosophy in general, lifestyle, spirituality, religion, philosophy, really all over the spiritual spectrum. We probably post about 15 to 20 articles a day, but it's amazing. It's been really good. We've been going around for about a year now, and you should check us out if you like what you hear, because maybe you'll like what you read. Well, every week I stream a little Taoism lesson, and we use this book, 365 Tao by Ding Ming-Dao. It's a daily devotional where you read a very short chapter and then kind of meditate and think about that and how it connects to you and connects to your life. If you don't know what Taoism is a very ancient Chinese religion and philosophy that started about 2,500 years ago by a legendary figure named Lao Tzu, who wrote this book, the Tao Te Ching. Legend has it, he was a librarian in the emperor's court, and he got fed up with all the war and a lot of the politicking that was going on back then. And right before he got on a water buffalo and rode off into the sunset, a border guard decided to stop him and asked him to write down his thoughts about the world. And when he did, he wrote the Tao Te Ching, handed it over to the security guard, to the border guard, and then left, never to be heard from again. And whether or not he actually existed is up for debate. But the wisdom contained within does not require him to have actually existed. Wisdom is wisdom, no matter how it was created. So we are on episode 12. It is Sunday, December 3rd. For those who celebrate Christmas, Mariah Carey is coming or is here, depending on how your radio stations are going. Yeah, so we're on chapter 60. So what we're going to do is I will read the very short chapter and then I'll talk about it. If you are in chat, feel free to ask questions. If you are listening to this later, this podcast is available on all the major podcast networks. So Apple, Google, Spotify, and of course, we live stream it on YouTube every Sunday at 9 a.m. Central. All right. Well, let's get going. Chapter 60, Celibacy. In winter, animals do not mate. Preserve your Tao by preserving your essence. We follow the Tao of the universe with great effort, but Tao is within us too. It is not something abstract, not something conceptual. Our personal Tao is our very life force. This energy begins with the physical and extends into the spiritual. The source of this energy is partly chemical, our hormones, nutrition from food, and genetics. Whatever we have that is spiritual arises from these substances. Followers of Tao call this the essence. Preservation of this essence through sexual conversation is crucial. This doesn't mean suppression of sexuality, for the impulse to make love is natural and irreplaceable. It means to harmonize sexuality with spirituality. The follower of Tao makes love according to the seasons. In winter, it should be less or not at all. In spring, it may be at its most frequent. The young should restrict themselves to about once every 3 days, while the middle-aged should be reduced to once a week. And the elderly even less than that. The secret is not to indulge too much without killing one's sexuality altogether. Overindulgence is to waste one's resources. Suppression kills the body on its most basic level. Find the proper balance and you will have a happy life and full spirituality. Man, this chapter is interesting. You're not going to agree on everything in life. Okay. So I think the point of this chapter is maybe, you can always have too much of a good thing, I guess, is what this is getting at. Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I mean, I'm married. I have 3 kids. So there's only one way to get that to happen. You know what? I guess I feel it, right? As you get older, I mean, I'm 41 now. And, for those who may be listening who are younger, yeah, it happens, man. I'm sorry, guys, but it happens. Like you'll get to, I don't know, I guess it was in like my mid 30s, late 30s, just a couple of years ago. And I was like, man, I'm tired like all the time. Why am I so tired so much? When your kids are young, like they go to bed at like 8:30 and then you have like several hours at the end of your day to just do whatever you want. And then, your kids become teenagers and their bedtime goes to, 9 and then it's 10 and then it's like, well, just stay in your room and be quiet. And, you try and teach them responsibility of trying to put themselves to bed. And that works. But there's a downside to that, which is that, your alone time went to 0. Like if you want alone time, that starts at like 11 or 10:30. And I wake up at 5:30 every morning because at 6, the kids get up and we do the morning routine. So it's hard to find time. But it is what it is, I think. And in this chapter, I mean, as far as it getting real specific on like how many times a week, I'm not sure I agree with that. I'm not sure I've ever read the Tao Te Ching and found very specific examples of how many times a week. But yeah, I understand the point that if you overindulge, things lose their meaning. And if you underindulge, right, if you never, give in to your natural desires, then you're hurting your own body. I mean, these are natural things. So to deny them is to deny yourself and who you are. So don't do that either. You want to find the happy middle ground, right? Live in the center, as I used to get told by my brother, find your center, be your center. And yeah, that's good. That's healthy, right? You don't want to not do it, but you don't want to do it too much. Don't tire yourself out. And eventually you get older, so hang on. It gets less. If you're in your young 20s, man, that's crazy. It's like all the time. And then you get older. I used to think that like as I got older, like somehow like that desire would like fade away. Not yet. Like it's not that my brain, functions differently. It's that the rest of me is like, maybe I'd rather sleep for, 10 hours. Maybe that's just me. That's my thoughts on chapter 60. Okay, enjoy. Okay, 61. Sorrow. Rain scatters plum petals. Weeping stains the earth. One can only take shelter and wait for clearing. When sorrow comes, its bitterness soaks everything. The sages say that life is an illusion, but does that change its poignancy? Let us be sad. It is feeling that makes us human. If we gain enlightenment, understanding all life to be a dream, sadness and unhappiness will fall away soon enough. The greatest sorrow of life is witnessing. Experiencing our own suffering is not as difficult as watching others held in fate's mighty grip. Bearing our own problems is easier because we are always aware that we can exercise other options. Up to the final one. However, it hurts us. It hurts the most when we can do nothing for others. The greatest sorrow is to see those we love suffer helplessly. When faced with a sad situation, it is best not to languish in it. We can change things by being with different people, moving to other places, or, if all else fails, adjusting our own attitudes to take the initiative. Sadness is transitory, like everything else. If we want to deflect it, we need only alter its context and allow it to be subsumed back into Tao. Sorrow. In the West, so in America, I think we have this habit of, in order for us to be wise, we kind of automatically jump to the idea of like a monk, right? Like a Buddhist monk, where they just don't have feelings anymore. Like it's just no emotions, like nothing phases them at all. They just stay peaceful at all times, no matter what. And somehow we think they just don't feel emotions. And that's not true. In Taoism anyway, we don't ignore our emotions, right? I would say that's probably harmful. I tell my kid this, right? My kid's 12 and he's in middle school, which is a nightmare. No one likes middle school. I didn't. But when you feel anger and sadness, don't keep those in. We want to express those and then let them go, right? That's the natural progression of things, right? Like the yin yang, you have a yin period and a yang period. You have sorrow followed by happiness, followed by sorrow. And it's around and around it goes. So if you try and live constantly in a yang period, if you try and be happy all the time, you'll burn out. You'll get frustrated because when that yin period comes back around, you're like, well, what did I do wrong? Right? And you beat yourself up for it. And that's illogical. Like that's not even truthful to who you are, the world around you. This, brings up a good point too, where it says, the greatest sorrow is actually watching someone else be sad because you can't do anything about it, right? Because you can't make them happy, right? Like they have to be able to go through their own period of sorrow and happiness, and that cycle will continue for them as well. But when you realize that others are going through the same thing that you are, maybe not exactly the same situation, but when you're able to see them kind of cycle in and out, your sorrow becomes a little less because now you understand that one day this will end, right? This too shall pass, as the good book once said. Yeah. And here at the end, it says, when faced with a sad situation, it is best not to languish in it. We can change things by being with different people, moving to other places, or if all else fails, adjusting our own attitudes to take the initiative. Yeah, it's not all just spiritual, right? I mean, it's not all just meditating. Like, get up and go do something. I know when I was sad, or like when I got broken up, when I got dumped, right, when I was dating, like my facial hair changed constantly. I mean, I would go from, a short beard to, just the goatee to, a longer hair like it is now to, the buzz cut. I mean, it's constant, right? I always changed something about my look. Every time I was sad, like it was really like I can go back and like look at pictures of myself and be like, oh, I know who broke up with me. Because I know the hairstyle, right? I know the facial hairstyle. So it happens. It's okay. Yeah, move to another place. Like, go do something fun. Like, go see your friends. Like, get a hobby, right? Don't just sit there and languish in it. Because like I said earlier, right, you can't be in yang all the time. And you can't be in yin all the time, or it's damaging. It's damaging to your mental health, to your psyche, to your spirit, to those around you. I mean, it'll crush people around you to just be sad all the time. Like no one wants to hang out with that because it makes them sad too. Which, going back to the other paragraph here, it says the greatest sorrow is witnessing, right? Your sorrow will leak into those around you. Except they'll be hopefully smart enough to kind of keep their distance. And that's sad. Like that makes you feel worse. So yeah, it's not all mental, guys. Sometimes physical reactions are needed. Sometimes, going for a walk, I think is not only healthy for your body, but healthy for your mind, which is strange because you don't think it would be, right? You wouldn't think that just moving your legs and your muscles would help you mentally, but it does. Strange. I can't answer that question on why, but give it a try sometime, and next time you're sad, it'll help you. I promise. Inya here in the chat says, I think that changing the environment can help dealing with sadness. Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah. Do you think isolation can be okay for a short time? She asks in the follow-up question. Yeah, of course. I mean, for me, I mean, there's certainly a time for meditation alone, right? I mean, you can get really deep when you're alone, right? When you're just left kind of with your thoughts. That can be a very powerful moment, actually. You can kind of lay your life kind of out in front of you. You can try and make connections. I think I do the best. This may be TMI. Sometimes you do the best thinking in the bathroom, right? Like, because you're all by yourself for once, especially in a crowded house, right? I mean, I don't know if you live by yourself or whatever, but look, man, sometimes you just want to be alone, and it's hard to do that when you're in a house full of children. So the shower, great time, right? Great time to think about what's going on in your life. So yeah, there's definitely, locking yourself in a room and put on some music or something. I have one of those bells, like those singing bowls, where you hold them in your hand, you take the stick and you go around the outside of them. Those are great for me. Like I love those because it drowns out kind of your own thoughts with that ringing. And so yeah, it's super cool. I really enjoy being by myself sometimes, although I work from home, so I'm by myself all the time. So my form of meditation is like doing dishes a lot of times, because we trade off chores in my house, so dishes are my thing. And that sound of running water and the TV going on in the background, but just concentrating and focusing on the task before me, that's how I meditate, actually. It's kind of surprising, I suppose, but it works. She says, true fact, especially with children, the bedroom is the hiding place. The bathroom is the hiding place. Yeah, for sure. I heard those bowls are very relaxing as well. I think they're called healing bowls. Yeah, healing bowls, singing bowls. I have two of them. I have a larger one and kind of a smaller one, so I can get different pitches out of them. All right. Moving on. Chapter 62, Interpretation. All that we experience is subjective. There is no sensation without interpretation. We create the world and ourselves. Only when we stop do we see the truth. The world exists, but we cannot truly be one with it, or with it in our normal modes of consciousness. Our minds know the world by constructing conclusions from the data of our senses. All that we know is filtered and interpreted. Therefore, there is no such thing as objectivity or direct knowledge of the world. Everything is relative because we are each condemned to our particular vantage points. As long as we all have different perspectives, as long as perception relies on our senses, then there cannot be an absolute truth. All knowledge from experience, valuable as it may be, is imperfect and merely provisional. Inner truth is only glimpsed by disconnecting the mechanism of excuse me. Inner truth is only glimpsed by disconnecting the mechanism of interpretation. If we can withdraw the activities of the senses and isolate that part of the mind responsible for filtering sensory input, then we can temporarily shut off the ongoing process of interaction with the outside world. We will then be in a neutral place that is wholly turned inward. We are left with an absolute state, entirely without distinction or relativity. This is called nothingness, and it is the truth underlining all things. All right. This one's a little deeper. Okay, so let's use this as an explanation. All right, so this is not a book, okay? For those of you listening to the podcast, I'm holding up a book. It's not a book, right? A book is a series of sounds that my vocal cords and lips and tongue combine to make that represents this. If I were to go to another country and hold this thing up, they would have other series of sounds with their mouths that also represent what this thing is. Okay. Names serve two purposes. They help us communicate, right? They give meaning to objects and people and places and things. And that's great, right? We need that. We have evolved that ability through thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of years. But they also define what an object is not, right? So they define what an object is, and they define what an object is not. And there lies the problem. When we teach someone what something is, it limits that very thing's potential. And it's important to remember that when it comes to people or defining lifestyles, that humans and things are more complex than the definitions we can give them. I mean, if you look at modern society, like everyone is trying to name themselves, right? Like everybody wants their own special name. And then some of those people are like, hey, that doesn't define me. So they give themselves a new category. And like the categorization of human beings is just endless, isn't it? I mean, it'll never, ever stop. I mean, I see it in the news. I'm like, man, aren't we just people? Like, aren't we just humans? But no, there's this natural tendency to define ourselves and to really label ourselves into these categories and cliques. And it's and like I said, in one hand, it's empowering, right? Because you recognize a person and you recognize who they are and their individuality and their uniqueness, and that's important. They should feel empowered. But on the other hand, you have now limited this human being, this complex person of emotions and thought and feelings and ideas, and it never fits, right? The label never works entirely, right? There's always outliers. And it just makes things worse in certain ways. And that's what this chapter is kind of getting at, right? Experience is subjective, right? True experience is nothing, right? There's no name for it. Like, you just are, right? It just happens. Life is just an experience. And when you attempt to define and categorize and put words behind everything, it limits everything that just happened. And like I said, it's the duality, right? It's the duality of nature, of life. You can't have one without the other. Whatever something is not. And it's, like I said, it's very natural. It's very human to do this. There are good sides to it. There are things to it we need. But man, when you start to realize that, when you have come to grips or come to understand that labeling and naming is this like double-edged kind of sword, and you look out online or you look out into the world and you see just all the craziness that's going on, and like this people group is bad and this people group is good. And it's maddening. Like, it really makes you just want to turn it off and just go read a book, right? Or like just go listen to music or, play a game, like the old ancient Taoists who used to like leave society behind, and they would just go out and like live in the woods by themselves forever and just live off the land. I get it. Like, I totally get it. Maybe not for me, but yeah, there's that need to just be like, wow, I'm done with all this. Like, this is just awful. And yeah, here at the end of the chapter, it says inner truth is only glimpsed by disconnecting the mechanism of interpretation. So when you let go of your names and labeling and your interpretation of things, then you begin to see what's actually there, right? We have to be able to withdraw from the activities of the senses and isolate that part of the mind responsible for filtering sensory input, right? We have to let go of our abilities to do this. Then we can temporarily shut off the ongoing process of interaction with the outside world, right? And that's what we're getting at, right? That's the point of the chapter. We have to come to that neutral place where we are neither one nor the other. Now, we can't live there, but we can place ourselves there temporarily to look out and observe ourselves, our lives, those around us, a situation, right? When we have to make a decision, an important decision that may affect ourselves, our jobs, right? Should I take this new opportunity, or should I sit here and do my job I'm currently doing? Well, how do you do that? You have to remove yourself mentally, physically from the situation and analyze what's going on. And when you can do that, then you can really see the truth for what it is. Inya says, life is an experience, a wild and crazy one. Yes, indeed, it is crazy, isn't it? Okay. Chapter 63. Articulation, something I'm not very good at. Rain dripping from eaves. Sound nature's poetry. We speak and write to explain ourselves. Knowledge of Tao lodges in the same part of the mind as poetry. That is why the ancients express themselves in verse. There is the same quick perception. When we are in touch with Tao, it is not our academic learning that is speaking, but the spirit of Tao itself. The old texts are very specific about this. That is why there is such a vast difference between the words of scholars and the words of a practitioner, just as the words of academics differ from the words of poets. At the elementary stages of study, we need to articulate our experiences and let Tao flow through us. flow through us. Followers of Tao frequently use writing, art, and even poetry as tools for self-discovery. By articulating their experiences, it helps them to understand the stages they are going through. Once they can do this, it satisfies and neutralizes their rational minds. The process clears away intellectualism and leaves the true Tao, which is not subject to words or images. Okay, so this gets a little bit back to the previous chapter where, man, I'm sorry, guys. I clear my throat all the time. Knowledge for knowledge's sake is generally frowned upon in the Tao Te Ching, and especially in like Zhuangzi, which is another Taoist text. Have you ever like read the news and you see all these things going around in science, like the study of space, and you ever kind of get the sense that like, why are we doing this? Right? Like, I understand the science program gives us new technology and benefits our lives, and no, I get it. Like, I'm educated enough to see these connections. But man, I mean, sometimes you just look out there and you think, like, you see these scientific studies where it's like, you know, $3 million was spent at this university to tell us things we already knew. Like, just to prove it again. Like, well, how many times do we need to prove something is true? Like, was it not enough the first time? Or the second time? Or the third time? Like, why? Like, why are we spending this money for this? And it's because it's curiosity run wild, right? It's knowledge. It's the desire of knowledge above everything else for knowledge's sake. Like, they want to know because they want to know, right? It's not enough to know that somebody else knows. Like, they have to know for themselves, and then spend money to do so. That's a real life example of, you know, what this is getting in touch with, right? So to use their example, right? If you read the Tao Te Ching in any translation, whether it be English or French or German or whatever, it's poetry, right? It's intended to be poetic in nature. In fact, some English translations will actually rhyme verse, right? They'll translate like that. And in Chinese, they do, right? Some of these are rhyming poems. And I think this kind of hints at the fact that, you know, art is, there's something about art that connects to you that you can't explain, right? When you hear poetry, when you see a painting, when you listen to music, there's something intrinsically valuable there that words kind of fail to describe, right? It goes back to that labeling thing, right? Like, experiences cannot be fully articulated, right? In through language. You just have to see them or feel the art. And that's true with the Tao, right? Tao cannot be adequately articulated in words. It's something you have to find within yourself. It's something you have to find externally in all things. You know, I've been working on my what's called true breathing. My teacher, George Thompson, who, by the way, you should check out his YouTube channel. Very cool. We've been working on what's called Taoist true breathing, which is where you are able to lower and slow down your breathing patterns to where it's almost, each breath is almost imperceptible through your nose, right? Is kind of the key, where your Zhuangzi used to say, you know, you breathe all the way into your feet, right? So it's like a full body kind of exhale and inhale. And it's, if you do it long enough, right, This is going to sound kind of hippy-dippy, but it's true. You will reach a point where, because of the way the oxygen is essentially getting to your brain and how slow you're getting your body to move, you will reach this point where it's hard to describe, right? Like, you're not blacking out, right? If you're blacking out, you're doing it wrong. You're not breathing at all. Stop holding your breath. But you can start to sense things, right? Like your sense of touch changes because everything is slowing down. Your hearing changes. I have my eyes closed, so I'm not seeing anything besides the back of my eyelids. But yeah, it puts you in a different kind of physical trance, I guess. It's wild, and that's what this is getting at, right? Like, you can't explain everything. Sometimes you just have to experience it. Yeah, articulation fails. As good as it is, and as beneficial as being able to describe things is, yeah, sometimes you just can't. All right. Chapter 64. Unbound. Birdsong flies unfettered over blue sky and green fields. Once you feel Tao run, give away, give away. What is it like to feel Tao? It is an effortless flowing, a sweeping momentum. It is like birdsong soaring and gliding over a vast landscape. You can feel this in your life. Events will take on a perfect momentum, a glorious cadence. You can feel it in your body. The energy will rise up in you in a thrilling crescendo, setting your very nerves aglow. You can feel it in your spirit. You will enter a state of such perfect grace that you will resound over the landscape of reality like ephemeral birdsong. When Tao comes to you in this way, write it for all that you are worth. Don't interfere. Don't stop. That brings failure, alienation, and regret. Don't try to direct it. Let it flow and follow it. When the Tao is with you, put aside all other concerns. As long as the song lasts, follow. Just follow. I love how these chapters lead into each other. Now, I guess that means I'm on the right track if the previous chapter, feeds in, if this chapter feeds in the previous chapter. I guess that means I was explaining something correctly. All right. So let's go back to true breathing. When you connect with Tao, and we all can, we just have to find it. But when you connect there, Taoists believe you can ride this wave for as long as possible, forever, actually, for your whole life. As long as you learn not to fight it, you don't try and direct it or force it. You just enjoy it. Just ride that wave like a surfer. You ever watch surfers? I've never seen surfers in person because I live in Texas. I mean, we have a coastline, but there are no waves down there. And trust me, nobody wants to surf in Galveston Beach. Those things are nasty. They're just brown. The water is just brown from all the drilling that goes on down there. But in movies, you see these people surfing and they just are these massive waves. They don't tell the waves where to go, right? They don't take their surfboards and beat the waves with it until it does what they want. They just sit there and they wait and they wait. And when they are able to find that wave, they jump on it and they're off, right? But how do they do that? Well, it takes practice. They are trained and they have focused their senses enough to recognize that wave when it comes. And then they paddle out, they jump on that board, and they're off. That's exactly what our lives are supposed to be like, right? Well, I shouldn't say supposed to be like, but that's what our lives can be like if we pay attention, right? Waves of Tao come and they go, right? You can choose not to take that wave, just as a surfer chooses to pass their wave. Maybe they're waiting for a better wave, a bigger wave. And so they sit there and do nothing. You can choose that, right? We have free will. Just because Tao is within everything doesn't take away our ability to choose to ignore it. Another example is the swimmer who fell off his boat, and he's like in this rushing river, and he's like, oh no, what do I do? He starts to panic. You can choose to let the river carry you and conserve your energy and flow through that water until you reach a safe place. Or you can swim against the current and try and, quickly get yourself out of the water. You'll get to the shore both ways, right? But man, one person is working way harder than the other person, right? What if you swim against the current and you run out of energy and you can drown? So could the guy who's just flowing down the river and conserving his energy drown too? Sure. But he's going to have a lot more energy to fight if something goes wrong, right? He'll be able to be more calm. He can see things coming. He can, he can help himself better, right? So too is your life. When you put yourself and you are able to hone your senses and your mind and your body to see those areas of opportunity in your life, then you can ride that wave to where it's going. And you'll feel it. When you're on that wave, just as a surfer can feel it through their board, through their feet and their legs, you will feel it through your mind and your body. And it'll just flow from you. It'll flow within you. Again, it's hard to describe. But it'll feel, the best way I can describe it is it'll feel natural, right? It'll feel like you're not forcing anything. And sometimes you'll even look back and think, holy crap, how did this happen? Right? Because you were just going with it. Like you just are hanging out with life and life was just taking you places. And it's great. It feels good, right? It doesn't feel bad. It makes you happy and fills you with joy. Okay. Inya here in chat says, it's like the row, row, row your boat song gently down the stream. Yeah, row your boat, man. Like just gently row your boat. Like don't go crazy. Like you don't have to. Like let the water take you. Work with the water. Don't paddle too fast and don't do nothing, right? Don't just sit there and be a pacifist, because that's not what Taoism is. It's not a pacifist religion or philosophy, right? You absolutely have agency to go where you desire and have those desires. In fact, Taoism would say desires are very natural. But there's something to be said about going with the current. Okay, let's move on. This is going to be our last one for the week. Chapter 65, Ascent. Chill mornings, stone steps. The path to the temple is steep. We may stumble at times, but we must always get up again. Spiritual cultivation is a daily activity. No matter how much we achieve one day, we must continue the next. Progress is often so subtle that we may feel the effort futile, and it is hard to get up each morning and try again with the same enthusiasm. Yet this is precisely what we must do. If we have the benefit of guidance, talent, and the proper circumstances, then the bulk of our attention has to be paid to such a simple day-to-day effort. No person ever leapt to heaven in one bound. Spirituality is achieved by steady climbing, like a difficult journey to a mountain temple. The number of steps is the thousands. The way is steep. It takes a long time to get there, and we must content ourselves with the panoramas along the way and think that the view at the summit will be the best of all. If we fall, we must pick ourselves up and get back on the trail again. Success in spiritual life is measured not by spectacular events, but by daily devotion. This iron will, this deep sincerity, maintains our ascent. Indeed, guys, indeed. I'm working on an article right now that's about daily practice. My daily practice is something I really want to focus on for 2024. A few goals coming up in the new year. But daily practice is definitely one of them. It's funny, when I grew up in a Christian church, you'd hear about, you should be reading your Bible every day and you should be praying every day. It's funny because here I am 40 years later, and I met with my teacher, George, a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, what do you do for your daily practice? You know what he said? He said, you should be reading every day. You should be reading the Tao Te Ching every day. And I'm like, well, I kind of saw that one coming, guys, right? And, you should be meditating every day. You should be doing something every day. You should be thinking and being mindful every day. It's repetition. I've been working over the last year or so in my breathing practice. I have this 4-7-8 breathing technique where you breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 7 counts, and breathe out for 8 counts, and you repeat it. So I figured out over a year ago that this would put me to sleep almost instantly. So I just started doing it every day to put myself to sleep. And an interesting thing happened a few months ago, where it became instinctive. When I would be angry or upset, I would find myself breathing very slowly, almost as if I were doing 4-7-8 without consciously thinking about it. And in my teacher's opinion, that is a sign of mastery. When you do something instinctively, that means you have now mastered that skill. Think of like a soldier, right? In the army, they do these things over and over and over and over again every day. So that way, when they're in battle, those same things just happen without them having to think about it, because there's no time to think about it in battle. Well, real life is a type of battle. And in order to prepare yourself for when things get crazy, you have to prepare. You have to practice these daily routines, whether that's, breathing or meditating or going for a walk or whatever it may be. Like, you have to do these things when your life is calm, so that it's instinctive when life is not calm. So in this chapter, it uses the analogy of climbing a mountain. You need to always continue to climb that mountain. It's not like you can just climb the mountain for a day and then be like, well, guys, I'm done. Good job. I made it. Like, this view halfway up the mountain, it's good. I'm just going to walk back down now. No, you need to get to the top, right? You need to keep going. And so too is your daily practice, right? You need to do it every single day. And it's painful, guys. Like it's hard. I mean, there are days where I wake up at sometimes 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I just don't want to do this. Maybe you're tired. Maybe you went to bed late. Maybe you forgot to do something last night and now you got to rush around and do it in the morning. But you got to keep going, right? You got to pick up where you left off and just keep doing it. And you're not a failure if it's hard, right? That doesn't make you bad. That makes you human, right? That means you're onto something, right? And the more you push into that, the more you recognize it and lean into it, that's where you grow. Like think of your muscles. When you work out, if you're doing like 2-pound weights and it doesn't feel like you're doing anything, you're not really helping your muscles, are you? But if you do like, maybe 10-pound weights and you feel it, right? That's when your muscles are growing. It takes a little bit of effort to make yourself stronger. You have to feel it for it to get better. And then, doing like curls every day, one day you'll notice, hey, I can go to 15 pounds or 12 pounds and the process starts over, right? But yeah, if it's not hurting, you're not growing. Inya says, right, can't go through life too fast. And then she said, very painful. Yeah, it's painful. Was it like that Buddhist? Oh, no, yeah. So Rick and Morty, do you ever watch this cartoon? Like, life is pain, right? I mean, yeah, it's true to a degree. It's not always pain, but it is sometimes. It's also happiness. Okay, well, that's going to be all the time we have for this week. Thank you guys for stopping by. I appreciate you always. Just to wrap up, if you want to read our articles, please go to thedaoist.online. If you want to find out more about the organization, go to thedaoistonline.org. And if I could do a shout out, thank you to all the editing team over the years. Over this year, we've grown a whole lot. So just want to take the time and say thank you. Ms. Inya, who is one of our fine editors over at the publication. Thank you very much. Yes, you too. Yeah, I do have a newsletter for a shameless plug. That's at thedaoistcorner.net. Feel free to subscribe. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week. Thank you and goodbye.